and I think you'll like it. It's basically he's doing an analysis of the Clint Eastwood movie Unforgiven, what he's calling the greatest Western ever made. So I think this could be really interesting because I love Drinker. He is he is like at the top when it comes to like movie reviews and commentary about movies, Hollywood, TV, etc. And to him doing like a full analytic breakdown of Unforgiven, I think could be pretty awesome. Because I've seen Unforgiven. I'm guessing a lot of you guys have seen Unforgiven as well. So I'm really curious what he has to say and if he's going to bring up points that I never even thought of when it comes to when I've seen the movie. So yeah, I have a feeling I'm going to like this one because it's Unforgiven is a fantastic movie. It's a great Western. Drinker is a fantastic commentator on this. So let's check it out. We're probably gonna love this. Let's go. You've never seen or heard of it? Okay. Then all I will tell you, it is a Clint Eastwood Western, like a Wild West, basically, or Western film, not during his younger years, but during his more advanced years. I think it came out back in, was it the early aughts that Unforgiven came in? I think like 2003, 2005 that it came out. Was it 90s? I thought it was after the 90s. But maybe I'm wrong. Okay, so it was 90s. My mistake. But yeah, great movie. Yeah, with Clint Eastwood, Gene Hackman, Morgan Freeman. I think there was one or two other kind of notable names there. I just can't think of them off the top of my head. But let's jump in.
You know, it's been quite a while since I've done a wanky, pretentious video essay, and the truth is, I've kinda missed it. I like doing that kind of thing. It's one of the reasons I started this channel in the first place, and as fun as it can be to rant and rave about the latest piece of cinematic sewage excreted by the not-so-great minds of Hollywood, it's also nice to be reminded that movies at their best can be something truly special, and why they're worth fighting for. And truly, movies don't come much more special than Unforgiven, the 1992 Clint Eastwood epic revisionist western about an aging former bounty hunter pulled back into his old life in a somber and reflective tale of revenge, corruption, and redemption that tried, and amazingly enough, actually succeeded at both deconstructing, but also paying tribute and saying a poignant and respectful farewell to the myth-making and tall tales of the Wild West. Wow, imagine that.
I mean, it was back in the 90s. This was back when they knew how to make great films. Let's be real.
Paradox is so cute.
Hollywood is not known. Hollywood has not been able to create a good movie since probably about 2010. 2010 was probably the start of Hollywood no longer being able to create great movies, and it was probably around 2015. It was like around 2015 or 2016 when the indie filmmakers that were posting their movies, their short films on YouTube, when they started to rise. So they recognized in 2010 the fall of Hollywood. They could see the beginning of the fall of Hollywood, roughly 2010, and then probably I'd say roughly around 2015 is when the indie filmmakers recognized it, started saying, fuck it, we're going to do it ourselves, and started making actual good movies again. And it's why I say this is the time for the indie filmmakers to rise. For people that like to back movies, look at the indie filmmakers. They're posting everything on YouTube so you can see that see their quality. This is the time to start backing these indie filmmakers to bring back actual good cinema.
Imagine deconstructing something without turning it into a fucking joke. It's a movie that doesn't just tell a great story with an incredible cast and some absolutely gorgeous cinematography, it also has a lot to say about the genre that it's part of and the decades of embellishment and romanticism that have been layered on top of it. It's a flawless example of how to deconstruct a genre without destroying it, stripping away the layers of polish and bullshit to expose a more meaningful truth at the core. And well, it's a movie I've been wanting to dissect properly for a long time now, so grab your 6-shooter and saddle up, partner, because we've got a long ride ahead of us. Unforgiven kicks off in the frontier town of Big Whiskey, where a couple of cowboys attack and disfigure a local prostitute because she laughed at one of them for having a small dick.
Boy, that escalated quickly.
With that.
I mean, that really got out of hand fast.
I mean, straight
Yes,
away
it
the
did.
film makes it pretty clear this isn't going to be some noble adventure like the days of John Wayne and Gary Cooper. This is much darker, grittier, brutal, and well, realistic. The rest of the girls go to the local sheriff, Little Bill Daggett, looking for justice, but funnily enough, they don't find much. Little Bill doesn't think much of the working girls, and he knows that hanging two criminals would only spark a war with the rest of the gang, so he's content to maintain an uneasy peace. Deciding instead to take matters into their own hands, the girls pool their savings and offer a $1,000 bounty to anyone that can bring the two men to justice, dead or alive. This is where our main man, William Money, comes into the picture. Once a notorious gunslinger, he's now an aging farmer and family man trying his best to put his old life behind.
Can I just say, I always thought it was funny, given how old Clint Eastwood is, that he has children this young. Like, I'm pretty sure Clint Eastwood was in his 60s by this point, in 92. Maybe 50s or 60s. So, like, he was in his, 50s or 60s at this point, and I think his character was also that aged in the film. And he's got kids this young. Like, the man is a unit for being able to keep, doing his old lady from when he's in his 60s and still have children. I mean, God bless the man. No, they're not as action. So I'm saying, Clint was in his 60s, 50s or 60s. The character was also in his 50s or 60s. And the character at that age is still able to still has children this young at that age.
But the farm's struggling and he needs the money, so reluctantly he teams up with his old partner Ned and a brash young gunfighter who calls himself the Schofield Kid to take on the bounty, and eventually they manage to hunt down and kill both men. Little Bill, on the other hand, hears news of the various bounty hunters converging on his town and decides to put a stop to it pronto. Tensions finally come to a head when Ned gets captured by Little Bill and tortured to death, causing a vengeful, drunken Money to ride into town and take revenge for his friend, finally reverting to the man he tried so hard to leave behind.
There's a point there about this climax. I don't really want to spoil it because I think the drinker is probably going to go into it, but him basically coming into town on a drunken rampage and just going ham on everyone there's a reason why it's so climactic, and it's not simply because he basically just comes to town guns blazing and taking everybody out. There is a much more psychological reason, I guess you could say, why this particular event is so important. But I'm not going to spoil it yet because Draker might actually talk about it, so I don't want to steal his thunder.
Now, to understand why this movie was so significant, you have to look at it in the context of its time. The Western genre was effectively dead and buried by the 1990s. After the golden age of the 40s and 50s, the spaghetti westerns and team-up movies of the 60s and 70s, the whole genre finally sputtered out and died by the 1980s. There was no more public appetite for western adventures, and apparently no more stories left to tell. All except one, that is. See, Clint Eastwood by this point was well into his 60s and looking to leave behind his tough guy action hero persona so he could tackle more thoughtful, mature films going forwards. But he wanted to say goodbye properly to the genre that had launched his career, and as it happened, he'd been sitting on the script for Unforgiven for years, just waiting until he was old enough to play the main character. And by the early 1990s, the time was right.
Killed just about everything that walks or crawled at one time or another. And I'm here to kill you, Little Bill.
You know, I could spend hours waxing lyrical about the incredible performances in Unforgiven, the sparse but brilliantly effective dialogue, the fascinating characters, the superb direction, and the somber, evocative soundtrack, but in a way, that would be doing the film a disservice because where it really excels is in what it's trying to say to the audience. the themes and ideas that it explores, and I don't mean in some preachy, pandering, identity politics kind of way. I mean it's something far deeper and more meaningful. The first and most obvious of which is the myth versus the grim reality of the Old West. So much of this film is concerned with dismantling and deconstructing the glamorous cowboy and gunslinger legend. Characters like English Bob and the Schofield Kid spin tall tales of heroic shootouts and legendary gunfights, but the reality is far more messy, brutal, and unglamorous.
Wait, hold up. Look, I need to check something really quick. I need to, hold up. This Schofield Kid, he suddenly looked familiar to me and I can't place him. Hang on. Is that who I think it is? Schofield Kid. Where the fuck is he? Where is he? Hey, what do I know him from? I know him from something. The Schofield Kid was played by
Amber Paradox is so cute.
Jamie's Wovet.
I can't handle it. She's just
but
so,
I swear to
she's so
God, I
cute.
know him from something, and I can't place it. Damn. Okay, maybe No? Okay, I thought for sure I knew him from something, but I don't. All right. I guess I'm confusing him with someone else that he looked like.
Killings are awkward, terrifying, and often pathetic. Men die whimpering and begging for mercy, or caught helpless and unawares. The best example of this dichotomy is English Bob, a bounty hunter who makes his way to Big Whiskey partly for the $1,000 reward, but partly to inflate his own reputation with the biographer who's there to document the whole thing. Bob knows all too well that the days—
Wait a second. When did Young Guns come out? Does anybody remember what year Young Guns came out? Was it like 90? Was it 87, 85?
Amber Paradox is so cute. I can't
wonder.
handle it. She's just so cute.
I have to wonder if they took that plot line from Young Guns too. Because if you remember, okay, Young Guns was 88. When was Young Guns 2? Because it's Young Guns 2 that I'm thinking of with this plot thread. Was Young Guns 2 like 90? 92, 1990? Okay, so 1990. So, okay, 2 years before Unforgiven came out, I have to wonder, when they wrote this script, if they had seen Young Guns 2 and thought, that's a good idea, we'll have that be with one of our bad guy characters, because that's what they did with what was his name? Oh God, who did William Peterson play in that? Oh God, that was the character. Oh my God, I'm blanking on the character. Usually I blank on the actor's name. I'm blanking on the character's name. The one that the character that William Peterson played, who was going after Billy. Pat Garrett, thank you. Yeah, Pat Garrett. Yeah, that was the plot line. That was like a subplot with Pat Garrett in Young Guns 2. He hired the newspaper man to basically go with him on the hunt for Billy the Kid to write his biography. And that's what we're seeing here in Unforgiven. So I have to wonder if they lifted that subplot from Young Guns 2 to use in Unforgiven. Oh, I wonder.
of the Old West, of gun battles and frontier adventures are coming to an end now, that there are fewer and fewer people around who remember what it was actually like, and that the age of myth-making and romanticism is just taking off. And he's there to exploit it. He's styled himself—
I know that Young Guns is loosely historical, and then Pat Garrett really did, historically, he supposedly had a guy following with him. But again, these people are, the writers of Unforgiven here were not concerned with historical. They're concerned with making a movie in a historical setting, but not based on historical fact. And I could see them having seen Young Guns 2 and going, that's a good hook to put into our movie.
Off as a classic gentleman gunfighter, elegant, refined, and well dressed. He even has an upper-class aristocratic accent.
Well, there's a dignity in royalty, a majesty which precludes the likelihood of assassination.
He spins exaggerated tales of mythical duels and epic gun battles to his eager biographer, who's already writing sensational novels about his exploits. But as we soon find out, his reputation is entirely built on lies and exaggeration. The moment he encounters Little Bill, his mask slips and his real, much more common accent shows through.
Bill. Well, I thought I thought that you were dead.
So much for the gentleman gunfighter. Bill easily disarms him and beats the shit out of him in the middle of the street, and as he explains to Bob's biographer later, he's been lying about his entire career. In fact, one of the only gun battles that English Bob actually managed to win was a drunken brawl in a saloon, where he only survived because his opponent's gun misfired.
Wait, doesn't this seem prescient for today with our modern day quote-unquote celebrities, where they've built their entire career on lies? And that is what has made them so popular, that they've basically lied their way to success. They've had their oh so desperate simps carrying water for them and basically retelling these lies over and over and over again to make them such huge individuals in the social space. The more things change, the more they stay the same, don't they? Yeah, they hire journalists to write the articles about them. Gee, who do we know that has been on a freaking rampage hiring articles to be writing puff pieces about them ad nauseum lately? A certain particular individual has really been going crazy with the puff piece articles as of late, haven't they? Sounding familiar yet?
Biographer Beauchamp is also a vital thread that runs through the story, tying together three of the major characters. Playing on his gullibility and romantic sensibilities, Bob feeds the writer heroic, embellished stories that he easily falls for. But after learning the truth about him and listening to Little Bill's much more pragmatic view of the Wild West, Beauchamp abandons English Bob and stays with Bill instead, basically transferring his hero worship to a new benefactor. Again, the film's making a point about how easily legends can.
And again, a thing with this, notice how the ideologue is easily jumping from one quote-unquote hero to another. And like while Bill is presenting himself, he's acting like he's like dark and gritty and giving him like the true story. Whereas Wild Bill might actually Wild Bill's actually kind of buffing himself up a little bit to make him seem more attractive. And the ideologue, who doesn't actually have a thought in his own head, and is just basically literally going where the fanatical wind blows, sees once, again, doesn't this sound freaking familiar? The minute the popular person gets taken down by getting exposed for their lies, then the simps immediately gravitate towards the person that took them down, because obviously this one's for real, guys. Definitely, we gotta side with this one because he's absolutely for real. Or Little Bill, sorry, not Wild Bill, Little Bill. Yes, sorry, I'm saying. But again, we're seeing like this is a movie from over 30 years ago, and we're still seeing parallels with this movie and today. We're seeing those parallels, and it's crazy that they're still around.
Be created, transferred, or in some cases, abandoned. And keep that in mind, dear viewer, because it'll be important later. The flip side to English Bob is the Schofield Kid, a young and ambitious wannabe gunfighter raised on the same tall tales and myth-making that guys like Beauchamp have been putting out. He represents youthful bravado, the seductive pull of violence and adventure, and the harsh awakening to reality. He's introduced as a brash, aggressive, and boastful young man who seeks out money to partner on the bounty for the cowboys. He carries a Schofield revolver, hence the nickname, and constantly boasts about his supposed exploits. Like, he claims to have killed at least 5 men. He exaggerates the prostitute's injuries even though he's never actually seen her. He talks tough, idolizing Money's legendary and horrific past as a cold-blooded killer without truly understanding it. In reality, he suffers from acute short-sightedness. He can barely see beyond 50 yards, which is why he needs Money's help, and his tough guy persona is compensation for his inexperience. He's the very embodiment of the dime novel gunslinger fantasy, young, eager for glory, and completely naive about what killing actually entails. His poor eyesight's a literal plot device to bring in Money and Ned to help him, but it's also an obvious piece of symbolism. He's short-sighted about where this is all leading and blind to the true cost of violence. But he learns soon enough. When the group ambushes the first cowboy, Davy, Ned mortally wounds the guy but can't bring himself to finish him off, shattering the Schofield kid's illusions about how easy it is to kill a man. Instead, Money has to finish the job. Later at the outhouse, the kid manages to ambush and kill the second
And yeah, if memory serves, Morgan Freeman's character used to ride with Clint Eastwood, and like Clint, he tried to leave that part of himself behind, and he still because he got disgusted with the life for a different reason. Like Clint Eastwood left the life of a bounty hunter for one reason, and Morgan Freeman's character left life for another reason. Basically, if memory serves, Morgan Freeman's character left the life out of love because he had his wife. And, didn't like the violence. He didn't like what he had become. Clint Eastwood, to a similar degree, did that, but there was also an X factor. There was an X factor in there that we'll get to.
Money has to finish the job. Later at the outhouse, the kid manages to ambush and kill the second cowboy, Quick Mike, catching him by surprise while he's taking a shit. This is definitely not a heroic showdown. It's sudden, ugly, and pathetic. Immediately afterwards, the kid breaks down, and he confesses to Money that this was his first ever kill. He's never even shot anyone before. The glamour and heroism that he imagined for himself isn't there at all. Instead, there's just the horrifying reality that he took another human life.
Yeah, you know what? You're right. The modern keyboard warriors, they talk mad shit but have never been in a real fight. You're absolutely right. This is sort of an analogy to the keyboard warriors of modern day, where, they love reading and screaming and talking all kinds of shit on Twitter. Like a certain someone that we know, whose name I will not mention to give attention to, how he has basically talked about that he's going to kill people, that people should be executed. Talks a really big fucking game on the keyboard, and if you were to put him in real life and basically put him in a situation to do that, what he is claiming to do in real life, he'd instantly break down crying and start pissing himself. Instantaneously. That's how the majority of these keyboard warriors operate. Is they basically, it's to a degree, it's the Hollywoodization of people. Is they've watched so many movies, they've watched so many TV shows that they get desensitized to the reality of doing something like taking a person's life, and they just think it's oh so easy. They think it's just like in a video game where you click the mouse and boom, the bad guy goes away. And if they were ever to be confronted with the reality of it, 99.9% of them would freeze, cry, and piss their pants when they were presented with that. Because reality, these are people that don't actually understand how reality works. And reality has a way of bitch slapping the fuck out of you when you least expect it. And this would be one of those times. So yeah, this is also, like, the kid is also the perfect analogy of the traditional keyboard warrior of today. At Verbose, thank you for the gifted.
It also sparks one of the greatest lines in the entire movie.
Well, I guess they had it coming.
We all have it coming, kid.
By the time the group returns to collect the reward, the kid has become a changed man. He's quiet, somber, remorseful, and horrified by what he's done. He refuses his full share of the money, overwhelmed by guilt. When Money urges him to buy some spectacles with his earnings so he can see properly, again, there's a deeper meaning there. The kid has finally gained some kind of moral clarity, but at the cost of his own innocence. In the end, he vows never to kill again. He hands over his gun and rides away, choosing to abandon the life of a bounty hunter before it destroys him. Arguably the only character in the whole movie who finds true redemption before it's too late. Another aspect of Unforgiven's story is the harsh reality of age and decline. When we first meet him, Will Money is a broken, aging, not particularly capable farmer, haunted by his reputation as a cold-blooded killer. He found some kind of redemption in his late wife, but now that she's gone, you get the impression that he's not really comfortable with the new life he's made for himself.
I wouldn't go so far as to say as that his late wife was the last thing that he had to hold on to being that good person that he discovered he could be when he found her. Because if memory serves, with the movie, he gave up bounty hunting because of his wife, because he found his wife, and she basically, she kind of made him become a better man. And yeah, when she died, he has nothing left aside from his kids, but, you know, yes, you could say, like, the argument being, like, well, his kids should make him want to be a good man. And to a degree, he is. He's doing the farm. He's doing the farm life for his kids. It's why he didn't go back to bounty hunting, because he's trying to maintain this peaceful life for his kids. But you can tell in the beginning of the movie, he's not happy. And the implication there is that his wife was the one centralized point that basically was that shining light of happiness, that point of grounding him to be a better person than he had been in his past. And with her loss, he no longer has that anchor. And quite frankly, the kids are just not enough to replace her as his anchor of goodness. As much, as harsh as that may sound, the kids just aren't enough to replace her in that respect. And that's why, he seems to be so unhappy in the very beginning and kind of throughout. It's because he's lost that shining point in his life.
Has to keep telling his children how much he's changed, how he's a better man now, but it's pretty obvious it's not them he's trying to reassure, it's himself. He desperately wants to believe that he's put his gunslinging days behind him, but hard times and his failing business eventually pulls him back into his old life. Physically though, he's definitely not the man he once was. He struggles just to mount his horse without falling off it. His aim is poor and he's obviously slower and weaker than he used to be. When he gets caught up in bad weather, he soon falls ill with a fever, allowing him to get caught and overpowered by Little Bill. It's the same story with Ned, Money's old partner, who reluctantly comes along out of loyalty to his old buddy. Not only is he suffering from the usual ailments that come with age, but he's lost the killer instinct that he once had. He can't bring himself to finish off a wounded man and has to turn the gun over to Money to do the deeds. Ned comes from the same background as Money, but arguably he's been a bit more successful in leaving his past behind and trying to become a better man. He's the voice of reason and humanity amongst the group. He's calmer and more morally aware than Money or the kid. He hesitates to kill the wounded cowboy Davy, showing mercy and compassion even towards his enemy. His presence is there as a reminder to Money and the audience that killing isn't easy, because it shouldn't be. He kinda represents what Money might have become if he'd succeeded in reforming. He's in a loving relationship with his wife Sally, in stark contrast to Money, who's widowed and alone, and he seems more at peace with leaving the old life behind. Their conversations around the campfire revealed their shared history and Money's lingering guilt, whereas Ned seems to have moved on more successfully. After the group completes the job, Ned gets captured by Little Bill's men.
Oh, and by the way, for those of you, this is the prostitute that got her face cut up. Does anybody recognize her? Anybody recognize the abused prostitute? No? No, it's not Drew Barrymore. No, she's the actress who played Sarah's mom or foster mother in The Crow, the one who hooked up with Fun Boy that was basically doing morphine. That's her. She was also in the first Bad Boys movie as like a clerk that basically she like a clerk at the police department that gave up the information to Sean Bean to steal all the drugs. Yes, this is her. This is that actress. Yep. Darla, thank you, that was her name, Darla from The Crow.
Men, he's brutally beaten and tortured to death, and little Bill leaves his body displayed publicly as a warning. This act of sheer cruelty and humiliation is what finally transforms Money from a reluctant bounty hunter into the unstoppable killer that he used to be. Ned's death is the final emotional spark that ignites Money's revenge. And when he's finally unleashed, he's become a terrifying figure. Opposing him is little Bill, the sheriff of
Okay, so Drinker didn't mention it. The one salient point about this, about when Bill gets, or when Money gets unleashed, is he also drinks. That was a key point throughout the entire movie up to this point, is Clint Eastwood's character refused to drink because he said that when he drank, that's when the demon came out of him and would allow him to do some of the most heinous shit as a bounty hunter. So he basically has been sober ever since he hung up his guns. And even during the trip with with the other two, when they were hunting down the cowboys, when he was offered that, you saw that scene where they were in the rain and Morgan Freeman offered him the bottle of whiskey to keep warm. He rejected it because he knew that alcohol would turn him into a person that he hated, that he didn't like. And during this big climactic scene, after they'd killed Ned and displayed his body, he gets drunk. He drinks. That is a very salient point in the storyline, that he is so down in he's been brought so low that he breaks the one thing that he has been holding on to for God knows how many years, maybe even a decade plus, of not drinking. And when they killed Ned, he picks up the bottle, gets drunk, and goes on a rampage. Like you see, when you see it happen in the movie, like he sees Ned in the casket, and yeah, I think it might have been a promise that he made to his wife. Like that's kind of like hand in hand with when he hung up, because he hung up the guns for his wife too. So at the same time, he hung up the guns and he promised his wife he wouldn't drink. And then when he sees Ned's body displayed like that, he drinks and becomes the demon that he used to be. So that point of alcohol is another very, Drinker didn't bring it up, but that is one of the, he kind of needed that alcohol to unleash that old part of him. He knew he wasn't able to do it on his own, so to speak. He needed the alcohol in his blood to be able to become that monster, to be able to do this job. And that's they kind of make a big deal out of it in that moment where he hesitantly takes the bottle and finally just starts drinking. And it's in that moment in the movie where you're kind of going, knowing what's happened before, how he swore off alcohol, he was refusing alcohol when it was being offered to him by Ned. And then you see him uncork that whiskey bottle and start drinking it down. And it's like an oh shit moment. He's basically breaking the promise that he'd made to his dead wife not to drink, because he's gotten morally, he's not morally, he's at such a low point that he's now breaking a promise to basically avenge his friend. It's honestly it's a very powerful moment. I'm kind of surprised Drinker didn't mention it.
Big Whiskey and the antagonist of the movie. And what a fascinating
Wait,
until
what?
the finally unleashed, he's become a terrifying figure. Opposing him is Little Bill, the sheriff of Big Whiskey and the antagonist of the movie. And what a fascinating antagonist he is. On the one hand, he represents law and order, but a twisted and compromised version of it. He's pragmatic and brutal in enforcing his version of order, like his lenient punishment of the cowboys to avoid a full-scale conflict. His approach is
Was he in Stairway to Heaven? I looked through his IMDb, I didn't see that. Maybe it was a very small part that he didn't get credited for. Or maybe I just missed it. Granted, I did not watch much of Stairway to Heaven. I think I watched 1 or 2 episodes of Stairway to Heaven and I said, yeah, I'm done. This is not The Crow.
upholding the law on the surface, but brutal and self-serving underneath. He protects the town's stability, but only on his own terms, showing contempt for the prostitutes that he considers beneath him and any outsiders that try to muscle their way in. He beats the shit out of English Bob and sends him on his way as a warning to other bounty hunters and vigilantes that he is the only form of justice out here. Why? Because they threaten his authority. If people can look for justice elsewhere for the right price, then what reason is there to even keep him around? As the sheriff of town, he's the embodiment of flawed and corrupt authority, and the myth versus reality tension at the heart of the film's story. Ironically enough though, he's the only character who's actually honest about the myths and legends of the Wild West. He gleefully deconstructs English Bob's sensational and egotistical exploits, tells some blunt truths about gunfighting, emphasising cool-headedness and accuracy over speed, and pragmatically picks his battles rather than dying a hero. He can also be surprisingly charming and even patriarchal towards people that he knows aren't a threat to him, like Beauchamp. Little Bill serves as Money's dark mirror. Both of them are retired killers trying to leave violence behind. Money's genuine but failed attempts to reform through love and family, showing remorse for his past, versus Little Bill, who uses his badge and authority to become a petty tyrant, enjoying the power without ever questioning the morality of what he does. He's got no real empathy or self-awareness, viewing himself as morally superior, while deep down, he's just a bully and a petty coward. Money confronts and finally embraces his demons, while Little Bill denies them to the very end. All of this is reflected through the recurring theme of the crooked house, Little Bill's half-built cabin, which he proudly shows off to anyone who comes near. It's crooked with no right angles and a leaking roof, a perfect metaphor for his warped sense of order and morality, and his inability to construct a functional life for himself. Just like Money, he's trying to build a more respectable and domesticated life after a violent past. Some of his comments imply that he used to be a gunfighter himself, in fact, and the house represents his desire for normality and legacy, but it always remains unfinished and flawed, just like his redemption will forever be incomplete because he lacks the moral character to become a better man. His dying words even echo this.
I was building a house.
Deserves got nothing to do with it.
The house, just like his new life, was building but never finished. Last of all, I have to talk about William Money himself. What a protagonist he is. Once the most feared man in the West, a known thief and murderer, a man of notoriously vicious and intemperate disposition, Money spent the last decade of his life trying to bury his past. After marrying a woman who I guess saw something redeemable in him, he gave up drinking and killing seemingly for good. But she's gone now and he's a struggling farmer in Kansas, widowed with 2 small children, living in poverty with no real prospects for the future. His attempts to create a new life for himself are failing, little by little, day by day. When the Schofield kid offers him a share of the $1,000 bounty for killing the cowboys, Money initially refuses but finally accepts out of sheer desperation, vowing not to slide back into his old ways, but little by little, he does. He repeatedly insists that I ain't like that no more, but when violence is required, somehow he always reverts to his old ways. He's haunted and world-weary. He's plagued by guilt and constant reminders of his dead wife and the dark past that he tried to leave behind. He often reflects on his mistakes during quieter moments in the movie, an aging man looking back on a life not well lived. Arguably, he's the darkest character Clint Eastwood ever played, a man who by his own admission has killed women and children, who's almost afraid of himself and what he might become, and who ultimately loses the battle with his inner demons. At the film's climax after Ned's death, a drunken and grief-stricken Money confronts Little Bill and the rest of his men in a Ned's death, a drunken and
This moment right here, this is like where I said it's the poignant moment where he's been refusing alcohol this whole time, and this is before he goes on the rampage. He uncorks a bottle of whiskey and downs it all, and you feel it. You feel like you can feel the importance of the moment when he does this, because up to that point you said, I've sworn off alcohol, he refuses alcohol, and you see this moment and you go, oh shit. Things just got extremely real.
And grief-stricken Money confronts Little Bill and the rest of his men in a brutal saloon gunfight, finally transitioning back to the cold-blooded killer he always was. And watching the whole thing is Beauchamp, his eyes filled with wonder and inspiration, his mind already spinning it into a mythical confrontation that'll one day become part of the tapestry of the Old West. From the fake bluster and self-aggrandizement of English Bob to the grounded pragmatism and self-serving corruption of Little Bill to the cold, brutal skill of William Money, he's finally found a hero fit for his novels. The worst possible kind of hero. The truth is that William Money isn't a hero at all because he was never capable of being one. He's a man who briefly tasted redemption only to lose it through circumstance and his own nature. Eastwood plays him with minimal dialogue and maximum presence, a tired, sad-eyed killer who knows the cost of every bullet. By the end, when he rides away into the rainy darkness after taking brutal revenge, we're not really supposed to feel vindication, we feel exhaustion. Yeah. He might have won the fight, but at the price of becoming exactly what he always feared. William Money stands as one of cinema's greatest anti-heroes, legendary, broken, and ultimately, unforgiven.
Yeah, and something that Drinker's not pointing out, when all this is over, there's no big fanfare. There's no white hero, like the hero, traditional hero, or type, the tradition of the hero riding off into the sunset that you would see with these westerns. No, he goes back home to his broken down little farm with his kids and goes right back to doing what he did before, being a pig farmer. There's no grand conclusion. It's he did the job. He became the thing that he hated, and then he went right back home to his family and went right back to that life again. That's also a very poignant moment at the conclusion of the movie where it's like this is not like the traditional gunfighter story where the gunfighter, again, rides off into the sunset, goes on to other grand adventures. No. He goes right back to the mundane. That he's not some mythical special hero righting wrongs or anything. He's literally just a pig farmer. And that's it.
Anyway, that right there is my little wanky video essay for the day. I mean, hopefully you enjoyed it and you got something interesting out of it, because I think it's important to make things like this once in a while. It's important to remember the power of good storytelling, the legacy of truly great filmmaking, and the need to always strive for something better. Anyway, that's all I've got for today. Go away now.
Yeah, that truly was a really great movie. It really was. Probably one of the best westerns of the latter half of the 20th century. It really was good. Easily one of Clint Eastwood's best.